if you get what I mean. And everybody is united in this country. Almost everybody is unified right now. They feel unified, but that doesn't end the fact that the rich are mostly white males and the poor are mostly black females. That doesn't change that fact, for instance. What is patriotism? I think it's a ridiculous superstition. But to put the best face on it, it's loyalty to that which you admire most in your own country. Well, what I admire most in our country is the Founding Fathers and the Bill of Rights and the gradual extension of the suffrage, so it includes almost everybody. Too bad we don't have candidates to vote for. There's a lot I admire in this country, but it exists elsewhere in the world too, not just in this country. TSOG, it's patriotic in the sense that it's very much in favor of the Constitution. Of course, not all of the Constitution. I think it has defects, like the slavery business, for instance. I don't want to restore that. But I just think the Constitution is one of the better political systems devised by humanity, and it's one that has strong roots in this country. And it still exists. You can look in the back of the dictionary, and there it is. It has nothing to do with the way our government actually operates, but it's in print. It's in the back of damn near every dictionary. You can find it in many schoolrooms hanging on the wall. So to the extent that it exists, it's an ideal that people can more or less recognize. If TSOG has no other effect than people reread the Constitution and start thinking about it, I'll be satisfied.
Why does faith get such a bad name in TSOG?
Well, it requires faith to decide that something is despicable rather than checking it, doesn't it? I think faith is the mental health problem #1 on this planet. What's going on right now, the latest crusade, after 1,000 years or more or less after the crusades began, we're in another crusade, because people who have faith in Christianity and people who have faith in Islam have an equal and opposite faith that the other people are all wrong. If they don't share our religion, there's something wrong with them. If they have dark skin, that's another thing that's wrong with them too. And on the other hand, they have the belief if you don't belong to Islam, you're wrong. And if you keep attacking Islam repeatedly over 1,000 years, you're very, very wrong, and we're going to blow the shit out of you. And all of this results from faith. Like Israel, for instance, the conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis, if they all became atheists overnight, imagine if there was a bolt of thunder and they all suddenly woke up and realized they don't know anything, they're just guessing. They could negotiate an agreement satisfactory to both sides within about 2 weeks. The reason they can't do that at present is because each one of them has a sacred scripture that says you've got a right to fight for this land and God is on your side, so go on fighting and God will take care of you. As long as people have that kind of faith, they're never going to stop fighting and killing each other. Mencken said religion is the chief fomenter of hatred in the history of the world. I would say faith is the chief fomenter of war in the whole history of the world. Even in comparatively secular societies, it becomes an article of faith that the government is justified, the other side is all wrong, we're all right, and nobody's supposed to think about the question at all. That becomes despicable. I believe we should think about the despicable. That which is labeled heretical, despicable, blasphemous, outrageous, those are the things we should think about most. Those are the most important issues confronting us, in my mind.
Who do you think most enthusiastically encourages faith in American society today?
Well, organized religion and the politicians, and of course the advertisers. Advertisers never ask you to have faith, but they try to condition you to react below the level of reason. They're working on conditioned reflexes. Religion and politics work on conditioned reflexes plus faith. If the advertisers could figure out a way to get you to have faith in them, they haven't quite, nobody quite feels about die-tech the way they feel about, the way some people feel about Scientology or the Islam or the Catholic Church or George W. Bush. But if the advertisers could work out a gimmick that persuade us that it's necessary to have faith in them, they would do it, of course, because faith really reinforces conditioned reflexes very well. Absolutely stops thinking entirely if if you have enough faith. People have been governed by faith throughout most of history. The people, it seems the world is divided into three groups, at least this is the way it seems to me sometimes. The gullible who have faith in almost any con man who comes along. The sociopaths who realize that the majority are gullible and take advantage of them by selling them the Brooklyn Bridge or short a stay in purgatory or an eternity with virgin dancing girls in paradise like Osama bin Laden is offering his followers. And then there are those of us who know that the majority are gullible idiots, and we see the sociopaths exploiting them. We don't want to exploit them. We want to wake them up until, hey, start thinking for yourselves. They never pay any attention to us. They much prefer the sociopaths who flatter them and cajole them and separate them from their wallets. And I long ago gotten used to that. I'm preaching to the choir almost all the time. I'm never going to reach the people who need to be awakened. I only reach the people who have started to wake up, and I help them to wake up a little further. Maybe that's the biggest role I can imagine for myself. It's a long time since I read Huckleberry Finn, but it's very neat at the beginning of the book when he's living with the widow before he runs away. She teaches him to pray, and he tries it, and he never gets anything he prays for. He decides that's a waste of time, and she tells him about faith. He tries to figure that out, and he comes to the conclusion faith is believing what you know ain't so.
Do you have any use for faith personally, Bob?
Well, let's say I have some rather strong emotional commitments and powerful intuitions, but I do not elevate any of them to dogmas, and I don't try to ram them down anybody's throat. I tend to believe in some kind of intelligence behind the universe. I refuse to call it God, because to most people God means an old man with a long beard who's watching to see which 12-year-old boys are masturbating so he can put them in a bonfire for 1,000,000 years. Not for 1,000,000 years, but for millions of millions of millions of years. I can't use the word God. It has so many stupid, superstitious connotations. That's one of the stupidest and silliest. But the number of meteors that have hit churches wiped out by floods, by earthquakes, by lightning strikes before they put lightning rods on them. And by the way, why do they need lightning rods on churches if they think God listens to prayers? All they got to do is, hey, don't let any lightning hit our church. That doesn't work. Faith is believing what you know ain't so. That's why they put lightning rods on their churches. You think of all the calamities that have happened to churches, the idea of a consciousness that has a particular concern with the human race out of all the possible species in what Carl Sagan used to call the billions and billions of galaxies, that the mind behind the universe has a particular interest in us and has a particular interest in being praised and flattered and cajoled by it. Geez, when I listen to things people say to their God, if anybody spoke to me that way, I'd really get pissed off at them. I don't need that much flattery. I don't want that much flattery. It's just plain embarrassing, and it's obviously sycophantic and hypocritical. What it comes down to is, oh, you're so big and wonderful. Do something good for us because we know you're so big and wonderful. It's talking to God like he's a 4-year-old retarded child. So I can't believe in. Besides, look at the records. Look at the Koran. Look at the Old Testament. Look at the New Testament. The God described there is as the mental level of about a 4-year-old. I can't imagine that character creating even a carbon molecule, much less a DNA molecule. He would get a couple of strands in a molecule right, then he'd screw up, and then to show his vexation, he would rain fire and brimstone on 2 cities and tell whoever he elected as his representatives at that time, go murder another tribe over there. I mean, that's all through the Old Testament. He's always telling them, go kill the Midianites, go kill the Hittites, go kill, wipe them all out, kill all the men and rape all the women. That's a God. That's the brain behind the universe. I can't believe it. It's only an intuition, and it's not a dogma, but I feel there's some kind of intelligence in the universe. And maybe above it for all I know, but I'm not going to argue about it.
What do you think, Bob, is the difference between a cult and a religion?
I don't see any difference at all. The Scientology, as a matter of fact, has enough members that it's less and less referred to as a cult and more as a religion. Anybody who calls it a cult tends to get attacked by it. The difference is the number of members and the size of the bank account. With few members and a small bank account, like the Branch Davidians, you are still subject to roasting, toasting, charbroiling, French frying, etc., just like in the Middle Ages. If you have enough members, enough potential voters, enough money in the bank account, then you're a religion and you're respectable, and George Bush will get on television and call you a faith-based organization so he can give you money. The Constitution sort of prohibits them from giving money to churches. It doesn't say anything about faith-based organizations. That's why they use that term so much. That was coined by the last Tsar, General McCafferty, faith-based organizations. I thought it was a wonderful term for what they're trying to turn this country. They're trying to turn us all into a set of faith-based organizations which nobody dares to think about anything. I used to think it was just religious belief systems that make people stupid, and they are I would say religious BS. BS seems to fit belief systems very well, the initials, you know. But I began to notice after I got out of the Catholic Church and was roaming around like a Woody Allen character without anything to believe in particular, I discovered that a lot of the political groups have the same type of rigidity as the religious groups. Believe it or not, I was the Trotskyist once. And then I became an objectivist, which was cured by meeting Ayn Rand. All you got to do is meet her once, and that's enough to cure you. She was more dogmatic than all the popes of the 20th century put together, or the Central Committee of a Trotskyist party, or the Central Committee of a Stalinist party. And then, of course, there's the case of the Nazis. Let's not forget them, talking about belief systems that led to all sorts of horrors. And it finally dawned on me that what's wrong with these people is not that they believe the wrong things necessarily, but that they believe something so firmly that they won't stop and think about it, and they won't listen to any objections. Well, now under the TSOG, the whole government is doing everything it can to advance the careers of what they call faith-based organizations, which means religions. They won't say religions because that's a little too obvious contradiction of the Constitution. They say they're supporting faith-based organizations. What they're supporting is stupidity, because faith is just another word for stupidity. It means not investigating, not trying to find out, not inquiring, not checking yourself. Just saying, I'll believe, which any idiot can do. They're trying to reduce us to a nation of idiots, I think, with all this faith-based this and faith-based that. W. He's always talking about faith-based this and faith-based that. They want to take us back to the Middle Ages. I call it a Tsarist Occupation Government, but in some sense it's even more. It's more primitive than that. They want to take us back to about the 13th century, I think, which is even before the rise of modern Tsarism. It's a pre-Tsarist government in a Tsarist disguise.
Do you really think this miseducation policy is conscious?
I don't know, but I'll tell you my best guess, is they are following the same policy that Muhammad the Great followed in India. This is not the founder of Islam. Muhammad the Great was the one who conquered India for the Muslims. And he deliberately reduced the Hindus to illiteracy and poverty, because he figured poor, ignorant people are easier to govern. The English did the same thing in Ireland in the 16th, 17th, 18th centuries. They forbade the speaking of Gaelic. They forbade the Irish to own horses or guns or any farm bigger than 1 acre, or I forget the exact, very small farms, and to educate their children. Then they found the Irish were sending their children to France to get educated, so they amended the law, making it a crime to educate an Irish child in Ireland or out of Ireland. So Muhammad the Great can think that way, and the great British Empire can think that way. I don't find it at all extravagant to believe George W. Bush and his co-conspirators are thinking that way. They're doing everything they can to make this country as stupid as possible. I don't think they're doing it because they're stupid.